Hey guys, today I want to talk with you about The Homefront, a contemporary romance novel by Kristin Hannah that was published in 2012. As per usual, we will start this review with a short synopsis, then proceed to the non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you haven't read The Homefront yet, then do not worry. I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. Homefront tells us a story of Michael and Jolene, a married couple with 2 daughters. Michael is a successful defense lawyer and Jolene is a soldier, a pilot within the American military. Their life, while pretty perfect on paper, comes with its own set of issues. Michael feels unhappy in this marriage and tends to spend most of his time at work, while Jolene is left alone to multitask between being a dedicated soldier and a perfect mother, which is also not such an easy of a task, taking into consideration that one of their daughters just stepped into the most difficult teenage years. While the situation at home is getting worse every day, Jolene gets the news about being deployed. While Jolene's heart is breaking as she has to leave her daughters behind, not being sure if she will ever see them again, Michael is struggling to adjust to his new role of a single parent. And then a tragedy strikes. So let's start by saying that this is the first book I have read by Kristin Hannah, and I don't mind admitting that I found this novel to be interesting and filled with emotion. It might have had a rocky start, but once I started to understand the characters portrayed in the novel a little bit better, the story did hook me in. It made me feel angry and horrified and sad at times. While it wasn't the type of a novel I just couldn't put down until I finished it, I still felt immense pleasure every time I had an opportunity to sit down to read it. Overall, the writing style of Kristin Hannah is very easy to read, yet it doesn't feel amateur in the slightest. The story is told from both Michael's and Jolene's POVs, which I believe was a wonderful choice as it really helped me to see the bigger picture and understand the motivations of them both. I truly believe that this is one of those cases where just having a book from just one of the characters' POVs would have made the story feel incomplete. I have noticed that there are quite a few people that compare Kristin Hannah's books with Nicholas Sparks and saying that if you enjoy his writing, you will find Hannah entertaining as well. But honestly, while I am definitely a sucker for movie adaptations of The Notebook and A Walk to Remember, I never really managed to find the appreciation for Sparks' writing. It always just felt a little too preachy for me, something that I didn't feel in The Homefront at all. In my eyes, Kristin Hannah managed to tackle a variety of sensitive topics and political stances without making it feel like one side or one opinion is absolutely right and the other is absolutely wrong. To me, it felt like she simply wrote a multi-dimensional story and left it to the reader's interpretation. This novel offers an interesting perspective of a family life in which the soldier is a woman and a mother. And honestly, I do think that the book wouldn't have carried such a punch if Michael would have been the soldier, because a man going off to war and leaving his wife and children behind is a story as old as time. Maybe I'm being subjective, but this reversal of traditional roles made this whole story 10 times more interesting to me. And while Homefront covers a lot of different topics such as abandonment issues, relationship issues, parenting issues, the brutality of war and mental health issues, at its core, this is a novel about one couple's marriage and their struggles within it. That being said, I think now it's a great time for us to move to the spoiler review, where we can discuss the events of the book in more detail. If you haven't read The Homefront yet, now it's a great time for you to click off this video. Homefront can be divided into 3 parts: pre-deployment, during deployment, and after deployment. The whole story is designed in a way that during the first part of the book, we would sympathize with Jolene and dislike Michael. During the deployment, we get to observe the challenges both of our main characters are going through and how such challenges change their worldview and influence their personalities. And during the last part, we're supposed to support Michael and somewhat dislike Jolene. And truth be told, that's exactly what I did. During the first part of the book, this pre-deployment period, I just couldn't stand Michael. at all. To me, he seemed like a man whose life is just a little too good and who consequently became bored with it. The only thing he needs to worry about is his job. Besides that, everything is always done for him. Jolene is the one who takes care of the house, does all the chores, plans cooking schedules, and takes care of their children's emotional and physical well-being. And on the rare occasions where she doesn't have an opportunity to stay on top of everything herself, Michael's mom is there to help her. When we meet Michael, in my eyes, he is just so bored with his life that he's subconsciously looking for reasons to shake it up. He's looking for something to be mad about. And more often than not, Jolene ends up being an easy target. We see him over and over again blaming her for all the decisions they made together. For example, he claims to hate the house they're living in. Well, maybe not the house itself, but the location of their house, as it takes him a long time to get to work and back. But it's not like Jolene went out and bought this house by herself and forced him to move in there. They made that decision together, and Michael seemed to not have a problem driving to work before when he shared the drive time with his father. Overall, he holds so much resentment towards Jolene that it kind of feels like she can't do anything right to please him. I mean, one of the first scenes that we get of them as a couple is him forgetting his wife's birthday, then promising to be home for dinner that she so graciously offered to cook for them, to just forget it all over again, come home extremely late, and once again forget the only gift she specifically asked for on her birthday, and give her something that she didn't particularly care about. And after behaving like such an idiot, Michael has still got upset with her, as if he didn't do anything wrong. I can't explain to you guys how badly it pissed me off his overall negligence and lack of support he showed for his wife. Now, I get that Michael had a strong stance against military. I get that he didn't particularly understand or support the American military as an institution, but come on, you can't support your wife without supporting the actual system. It's not that difficult to once in a while join her at a work event, ask how her day went, or let her put up a photo or two around the house in which she's wearing a uniform. Her being a soldier is not a new development after all. He started to date Jolene knowing that she's a soldier. He married her knowing that she's a part of a military, and yet it felt like because of Michael's stance, Jolene is forced to suppress and hide such a massive part of herself just to make Michael more comfortable. The more the book progressed, the more it felt like Michael's problem with Jolene being a soldier is not even the fact that he disapproves of the military, but the fact that it's Jolene, his wife, who is a soldier, effectively making him a military husband. I believe that Michael sees this title as demeaning, as something that makes him weaker in the eyes of the others. This particular idea is illustrated perfectly when Michael decides to check out the support group for the spouses of the soldiers who are being deployed, and he quits on it before even giving it an actual try, just because the support group consisted of women. And I guess he's just too cool to hang out with military wives. The thing that I hated the most, however, the thing that made my blood boil when it came to Michael's attitude towards Jolene's profession, is when he dared to blame Jolene for leaving them, for choosing military over family. I mean, we're talking about a man who's working until late evening every single day. A man who is practically never there for his family anyways. Jolene and the girls are the family, while Michael is there just when he feels like being a part of it. His attitude just felt so very hypocritical and misogynistic. He is allowed to leave for work every day. He's allowed to concentrate on his career. He's allowed to skip important celebrations and after-school activities because he works a lot and the work he does matters. But Jolene leaving for her work means that she's abandoning her family. She's being a bad mother, which is rich coming from someone who is actually a pretty neglectful father himself. There is a part in this novel where Michael doesn't show up for his daughter's race after he promises her that he will be there, and we get this gem of an inner monologue. It wasn't enough that he loved his children and had a successful career and did his best. She demanded more, and that's such a shitty excuse. Of course, your wife demands more. It's not enough to love your children, you also need to be there for them when it matters. After everything I have seen in the pre-deployment part of the book, I just found it ridiculous that Michael felt offended when Jolene asked him to take care of her children before leaving for war. Of course, she will ask him to take care of her children. All we have witnessed up until this point was that Michael is a rather self-centered and definitely not an attentive, hands-on type of parent. Even when he himself learned about Jolene's deployment, he was too petty to help her break the news to their daughters. I mean, I get that their marriage was falling apart and that he was feeling upset with Jolene, but at least help to prepare your children for what is about to come. Don't do it for Jolene, do it for your children. I swear to God, more often than not in this part of the book, I just felt that Jolene is raising more than one teenager under her roof. However, to be just, Michael is not the only one to blame for the tension in this marriage. We see that both of them have serious communication problems. Jolene herself comes off as a very closed-off person who will rather pretend that everything is alright if that will help to avoid a conflict situation. In addition to that, I can understand how this whole choose happiness attitude can grow old and seriously push one's buttons. I respect immensely people who can make themselves to always see the good in things, to always choose to be happy. But one thing is to be able to handle misfortunes in this manner yourself, and completely another thing is to push this mentality on others. I can say from my personal experience, I have problems with anxiety, and a few years back said problems reached such a place where I felt like I could barely function. During the same time, I honestly wanted to punch every person who told me to just not think about it, or not stress about it, or think positively right in their face. If there's one thing that I liked about this whole pre-deployment situation when it came to Jolene's and Michael's marriage, is that despite Michael clearly giving up on them as a couple, he not once even entertained the idea of cheating. It's such a cliche at this point that if something goes badly in the family, one of the partners will just go find someone on the side because they feel like divorce is unavoidable. Michael, however, he was angry, he was miserable, he was unjust to Jolene, yet he did not cheat. When he felt like he couldn't handle it anymore, he basically asked for divorce, and I can respect that. Then the story proceeds to the second part, where we get to follow Jolene and Michael on their separate journeys, and honestly, that might have been my favorite part of the book. When it comes to Jolene, I can't say that I recall ever reading about a war in a fiction novel. I have read plenty about it in historical fiction or history books for that matter, but I believe that The Homefront was the first novel that showed me the ins and outs of war and the life of American soldiers. And I have to say that I found it very intriguing. I just love this wonderful mix of cruelty and mundane life. How you might start your day drinking Coke, lazily talking with your family, and how you might finish the day collecting body parts of fellow soldiers. I feel like most of the time when I think about war, I tend to think about the cruel, violent side of it. Kristin Hannah, however, did show it to me from another side, which made me think. Meanwhile, we have Michael dealing with his own battles. He's busy at work and just as busy at home. I truly appreciated that he didn't turn into a super parent right away, and that might be because I really couldn't stand him in the beginning of the book, and it felt rather satisfying to see him struggle. And while Michael at that point still couldn't be defined as a good husband, since for the longest time he didn't manage to at least send a letter to his wife explaining how his worldview changed in these months, he grew into a caring, thoughtful, and a capable parent. I respected him for taking the time to try and understand what Jolene is going through better. I respected him finally being there for his children, and I respected him for actually working in order to pick up the slack instead of just throwing all Jolene's tasks onto his mother. There is one scene in particular that I want to mention, and that's when Michael learns about Jolene's injury and we see the fellow soldiers and military wives simply showing up at Michael's house with groceries and other essentials. I loved how well it portrayed that Jolene is not alone, that she's a part of this strong and united community that supports each other. I loved how Michael got to see why Jolene, a woman who didn't really have a proper family growing up, would appreciate the military the way that she does. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about the post-deployment part of the book. As I have mentioned before, this book was designed in a way that we would start the story by supporting Jolene and wishing Michael would get himself together, and we finish the story with the roles being reversed. Let's once again start with Michael. In the post-deployment part of the book, we see Michael to really try to make amends for his earlier behavior. He feels completely comfortable in his role as a father, and he strives to be a great husband to Jolene. He doesn't always succeed, but then again, it's impossible to blame him for not knowing how to navigate an impossible situation. It could be argued that he needed to push Jolene, not to let her wallow in self-pity and whine. It could also be argued that he needed to do a better job convincing her that he does not want to stay with her solely out of duty. Yet Michael is only human. Someone whose life got completely reversed once Jolene left for deployment. He not only suddenly had to realize the errors of his ways, but he also had to readjust to a life with a wife who was incredibly broken, both mentally and physically. The way I see it, he navigated this whole situation better than I expected him to. To me, at times, it even felt like he was doing too good of a job, as in he became a wonderful husband overnight. And here I have a little bone to pick with the author, because even though I know that months have passed between the time Jolene left and came back, it didn't actually feel like it. I know I'm being nitpicky, but I would have appreciated it if the clearer passage of time would have been depicted. Now, when it comes to Jolene, I can't say that I hated her in this part of the novel. I can't even say that I strongly disliked her. Yes, she was behaving like a bitch more often than not, but I was willing to cut a more slack to her than I did for Michael in the beginning of the book, because we actually got to follow her through this journey. We got to see her pain firsthand. Knowing what she went through and what she's still going through made it so much easier to sympathize. Honestly, while I wanted her to find a way back to a woman she once was, while I wanted her to be able to properly communicate with her daughters again and be a mother, to an extent I even enjoyed this little spice she gained. I enjoyed her being more open with her own emotions instead of continuing to pretend that everything is perfect. By the time the book ends, Jolene is not out of the woods yet, and we understand that she might never be truly herself again, but we see her finally learning to accept her situation and starting to be excited for life. Before we wrap this review up, I just want to point out that one of the things that I appreciated the most about the way Kristin Hannah wrote this story is that she did not try to paint the military through rose-tinted glasses. She did explore both sides of it. She showed the good parts, as in Jolene's pride in the work she's doing, the overall strength of community that comes with being actively involved in military life, but she also showed us the worst parts of it. And I'm not even talking about the horrors of the war. That is unfortunately expected. What I'm talking about is the lack of care soldiers experience once they are back. That one phone call Jolene made asking for help told us everything we needed to know. To put it in her own words, there was so much training before one goes to war, and so little for one's return. But that's just my opinion. What about yours?